Hey there, it's CJ Willie, and I'm cracking a pack. Today is pack number 21 in my science project of cracking a 1990 top Cello box. Click on the description below for a link on how this science project is working. It's my preview video, and it describes the science project and what I'm hoping to achieve. With all the packs that I crack, I'm going to share my thoughts and memories about some of the players or cards. After I've cracked the pack, I'm going to choose the best card of the pack. Doesn't mean it has to be a rookie, superstar, or even a Hall of Famer. It can be something funny about the photo, it can be something interesting about the player, or maybe some memory I had of the player back in the day. So, just about done. Down to our last 4 packs, 21 is today. We've pulled most of the chase cards. I think, until I do the review video, I think most of the big name rookies we've pulled. I don't know if we've gotten a Bernie Williams or a Marquise Grissom out of the Cello box. I mean, those are kind of second tier rookie cards, but I mean, good rookie cards to have nonetheless. Okay, first card out of the pack, Scott Sanderson. Came up the starting pitcher with the Cubs, spent some time with the Expos as well. I believe he passed away just recently, either last year or the year before last. Kurt Young, we've talked about him. Starting pitcher with the A's. Was part of their 88, 89, 90 pennant, winning run. I believe he spent some time as a pitching coach as well. Mark Portugal seems to be kind of happy in this photo. Spent some time as a starting pitcher. Had a little bit of success in the major leagues. Juan Bell, younger brother of Jorge Bell. Wasn't quite the power hitter or player as his older brother Jorge Bell, or George Bell, as sometimes it was spelled on the card. He came up as second baseman, infielder. He was supposed to be kind of the first guys that would push Cal Ripken off of shortstop into third base, but that didn't happen. Steve Searcy, the year before in '89, he was a top prospect. I think he spent a couple of years at best in the major leagues with, a cup of coffee, but didn't really establish himself as a major leaguer. Luis Rivera, backup infielder, Expos and Red Sox. Nothing, too exciting. Goose Gozo. Now, this is a name I don't remember. I suppose if he was good as Goose Gossage, he would have been something, but I don't think that he really panned out at any level. Jeff Innes came up as a side-arming reliever with the Mets. He had a few relatively successful years as a middle innings reliever. Next card's kind of stuck behind. Mike Rosler. I don't remember too much about, I think it's Rosler, not Rosler. Rosler. He may have been a middle innings guy, but I don't remember much about him. Kurt Ford came up with the Cardinals. He was supposed to be their next speedy outfielder, hit for a relatively decent average, get on base still. I mean, he was speedy, but he just couldn't hit or have an on-base percentage worthwhile. He later was traded to the Phillies for Milt Thompson. Here's our Nolan Ryan subset. The first the first 5 cards of the set are Nolan Ryan. The first one is his regular card, and the next 4 depict each of the teams he played for, which were the Mets, Angels, Astros, and Rangers. I think we may have already gotten this card before. I really wanted to complete the subset out of the Cello box. Tom Pagnozzi, starting catcher with the Cardinals. He was the backup catcher to Todd Zill, and then Todd Zill moved to third base. Pagnozzi became the starting catcher for the Cardinals from about 1992 all the way through 1998. Mike Marshall, he had a ton of power. Contact was kind of his problem, and he was a horrible defensive player. So in the outfield and first base, he just couldn't cut it as a defensive player. Maybe if he had gone to the American League as DH, he probably would have had a little bit more of a longer career. Floyd Bannister, starting pitcher, number of teams, Mariners, White Sox, Royals. He ended up his career with about a .500 record. This was toward the end of his career, so yeah, 133, 142, a little bit under. He had a few good years, but he played for a lot of really bad teams, and he himself wasn't the most fantastic pitcher either. I mean, he did get a lot of strikeouts, but, whip, walks, hits, per inning pitched, wasn't really a stat till later on, and I'm pretty sure he had a high whip. Mike Boddicker came with the Orioles. He was a rookie on their American League pennant winning and World Series championship team in 1983. Had some success. Also spent some time with the Red Sox and the Royals. And then our handy dandy, let's get some pages. Okay, flip this around. Gary Carter, Hall of Famer. Carter started out his career at the Expos and the Mets. Toward the end of his career, spent some time with the Dodgers, Giants, and then I think his very last few games he went back to the Expos. Gary Carter, he always had a smile on his face, and I hated when the Cardinals would play the Mets because Carter was already torturing the Cardinals when he was with the Expos. Moving to the Mets kept him within the same division, and those were some great battles between the middle 80 Cardinals and Mets. Fernando Valenzuela came up with the Dodgers. Fernando Mania, I remember that in the early 80s. The memory I have most about Fernando was when he would pitch, he'd go through his windup, and in his windup he'd be looking to the sky, and then at the last moment look to the plate. And I always wondered how he could keep the ball within the strike zone when he wouldn't look at the plate until he was just about ready to deliver the baseball. Billy Spires came up as a hot prospect with the Brewers as a shortstop. He had a couple of good years as a shortstop, but then spent most of his career as a utility guy, shortstop, third base, second base. Okay, next card, Bruce Hurst. He was part of the pennant-winning 86 Red Sox. If the Red Sox had won the World Series, Bruce Hurst would have been the World Series MVP. He was lights out against the Mets in his starts against them. After pitching with the Red Sox, he moved on to the Padres. Pretty successful pitcher when you look at his back. 103 wins against 84 losses. In fact, led the National League or tied the National League complete games in 1989. A little bit of a soft-throwing lefty, but he knew how to pitch. Claudio Washington, this is toward the end of his career, spent a number of years with the Yankees, Angels, I want to say the Braves maybe. Yep, Braves, White Sox, Athletics. For a good part of his career, he's a starter. Kind of a top-of-the-order guy, had a little bit of pop, hit for average. Tony Fernandez, he displaced Alfredo Griffin as the starting shortstop with the Blue Jays. If you look up his baseball reference stats, Tony Fernandez spent a lot of time in the big leagues and accumulated a lot of hits. And I think he flies a little bit under the radar. He didn't have quite the same pop as like Cal Ripken Jr. and Alan Trammell, but he hit for a decent average and was a good defensive infielder. He just passed away recently as well. Mike Dyer, I don't remember much about Mike Dyer. Alvaro Espinoza, utility guy. Basically bounced around with a few clubs and sat on their bench and came in late inning, defensive replacement. Eddie Whitson came up with the Giants, spent a year with the Yankees, moved over to the Padres. He was traded from the Giants to the Yankees, and he had, I can't remember the exact details, but he was on the pitching mound, and I guess someone from the stands threw a knife out onto the field, and it like grazed his arm and came kind of near him. It completely mentally unbalanced him, and so he didn't have much success with the Yankees and demanded a trade and moved on to the Padres shortly thereafter. Tim Jones came up as a prospect with the Cardinals, but really spent a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, as like a backup utility infielder. Ellis Burks, he was a great player. Came with the Red Sox, had a high batting average, defensively was good. It wasn't until he moved over to the Rockies in the rarefied era of Coors Field where he exploded offensively. Home runs, batting average. He was part of that Rockies team that had Dante Bichette, Larry Walker, Todd Helton. Really caught an offensive groove when he went to Colorado. Jose Lind came up as starting second baseman with the Pirates. Great fielder, didn't hit much for average. Basically what you get out of your second baseman in the 80s, there weren't too many of the Jeff Kent types or the Robinson Cano types. A lot of these guys were hit bottom of the order, not much pop, some average, and usually were good defensively, because they could pivot on the double play. Let's see here. Chuck Grimm, mainly a middle innings reliever with the Brewers. Rene Gonzalez came up as a backup infielder, spent a lot of time with the Orioles. Probably a couple of other teams, but I don't recall off the top of my head, which teams those were. Last 2 cards, Craig Lefferts. Was a lefty reliever for a number of years. I believe he started out with the Padres and then the Giants. I'm not entirely sure on that. Yeah, Cubs, Padres, and Giants. You know, in 1989, the year that the Giants went to the World Series against the A's, looks like he got 20 saves and for 2 years in a row had an ERA below 3. And then our final card is Brett Saberhagen. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Brett Saberhagen. I did not like him. 1985 World Series is still a sore subject with me. Cardinals should have won it, but they got robbed. The funny thing about Brett Saberhagen, when you look at his stats, he alternated great pitching years with horrible pitching years. So, I mean, if you take a look at the back, his rookie year, 10-11, not too bad. Then he goes 20-6. The next year, 7-12, not great at all. The following year, 18-10. The following year, 14-16. And then in 89, you know, he was an all-star, 23-6. So he kind of had this interesting career where on odd years he was fantastic. Even years he really blew. Later on went to the Mets, Rockies. I think maybe the last year of his career with the Red Sox. He was a great starting pitcher, just depended on what year he was pitching. Okay, card that I think is the best card out of the pack, or my favorite card out of the pack. I am going to go with this card here, Goose Gozo. So I think we pulled him in one of the packs earlier, and I had the same spiel where I was like, I don't know anything about him. So I did a little bit more research, and what's really interesting, when you look at the back of his card, in 1989 he went 4-1. That's not too bad. But if you look at it, he had a 483 earned run average. And if you look a lot closer, he didn't strike out a ton of batters, and he walked a lot. And so he wasn't really a starting pitcher that was going to blow you away. He may have tried to pan out a career as a middle reliever, but I think after 1989, I don't know how often he pitched. I think what's interesting about this is you can tell that he was a late season call-up, spent time in August and September with the Blue Jays. The funny thing about it is the name Goose Gozo. Don't be trying to call yourself Goose unless you can pitch like Goose Gossage. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like it, please subscribe and share. In the comment section below, tell me what your favorite card or best card out of the pack was. Until next time when I crack pack number 22 from my 1990 Top Cello box, remember, I'm doing this for science.